Dan here, thepaintballpost.com, and today I want to talk about one of the best loaders that still left me a bit disappointed. So, I picked up, much like a lot of people, a Spire IR2 on Black Friday. They were on a very good deal on multiple websites across the US, and I managed to order one into Canada. They're great as far as I can tell. I say that because I, unfortunately, don't get to run mine 100% through its paces because it's winter here. It's minus 35 degrees here, and that's Celsius. So I'm not playing paintball out there. But the Spire loaders have always been great. Now, my IR2 is currently disassembled being painted because I got it in white because it was on a really good deal. And yeah, it was great. It came with the spring ramp and the Crown SF2 speed feed. Wonderful. I do not recommend the IR2 anymore, though, at least in its stock configuration, because heading over here, you can see a black Spire IR2 is 120 bucks. A black Spire IR2 SE is 130, and that includes a spring ramp and includes a speed feed. It is not as good of a speed feed, seemingly. I haven't tried that particular speed feed myself yet. It is not as good, as far as I can tell, as the SF2. We'll get to that as we go here. My first kind of gripe, and it's going to be the main gripe I have with this thing across the board, has nothing to do with how well it loads. As far as I can tell, it loads as good or better than some of its more expensive counterparts. The main gripe I have with it is that there is no manual. Now, that isn't the end of the world if you are fairly experienced with loaders and taking them apart and putting them back together, right? If you can take apart a Halo and not pinch any of those wires, you're probably going to be fine with an IR2. But if you've, say, been using a gravity-fed hopper that you've never taken apart in your life, you just run under the tap at the end of the day, and you decide, man, that's such a good deal for Black Friday, I'm going to go get one of those. How do I even take this thing apart? There's no documentation at all in the box. There's no documentation at all on the website, right? If you go to Virtue's website and you look for manuals, you can find a Spire 4 and a control manual, and then a bunch of their old boards. And I've read your manuals for your boards. I have one in my my PM8. It's a great board. I can manually set it to match exactly what is going on in the NXL rulebook right now. Wonderful. Why don't you have that for the Spire IR2 or the Spire 5 for that matter? Now, I kind of get it. These are very plug and play. There's an on-off button on the back. That's kind of it. But disassembly, that's a bit of a different story. Thankfully, it is almost completely toolless. There's a few tools to take out parts that you probably never will have to on the bottom of the internals, but we're not really going to get into that. You pop it off. There's a little latch here at the back. Can't quite see it in my photos. Sorry. Again, I don't have mine on me. And then internally, just like on the bigger brother Spires, there's just this spring latch here that lets you take the whole internals out. Very easy, very quick, very clean. I love it. Would be nice to have a manual, but you labeled it. Huzzah. Good job. What you have not labeled is the drive cone. This is a pain to take out, combined with you don't know if you're doing it right because of how difficult it is. It feels like you're doing something wrong when you go to remove this. And it's to the point where if you go and you watch videos from some of the retailers of this loader, they don't know that this is toolless to remove the drive cone. Let me just repeat that, but looking a bit more into the camera. Virtue, your retailers aren't aware that this is toolless to remove the drive cone because you've never put a manual out for your product. That is a problem. Now, I thankfully as horrible as it is to do on the internet, read the comments. And on some of those videos, people are like, yo, no, it is toolless. You just have to push those tabs together. It's just a pain. I get why you would assume, no, this thing's not toolless, because it is that difficult. And like, it's doable, but you feel like you're about to snap a nail. It's really tiny tabs to remove. You aren't going to have to do it very often, right? Maybe if you break some paint, or if you get shot directly, into the speed feed or something like that, you might have to do it. But it's not something you're ever going to have to do on the field. So I kind of like the fact that it is retained that well, and it's just never going to come off while you're playing, but it felt like I was doing something wrong when I removed it. Having a manual that even just says, hey, you're not going to have to do this very often. These are what you do. Or this is what you do. You push these tabs together. Solves the problem. So write a manual for your darn product. Especially because then we get to the spring ramp. Now, again, thank you for putting out the SE version of this, because this has largely been solved. These should have come with these in the first place. Thankfully, a bunch of the competition for the IR has these installed. Virtue had to answer to that, and they're putting them into the SE version now. But the originals did not come with the spring ramp pre-installed. You would have to buy it. As I stated earlier, there is no reason to buy the original IR2 now that the SE is out. The price difference between a black IR2 and IR2 SE, that's your spring ramp right there. And then it comes with a speed feed. It's just, there is no reason to get the regular IR2 anymore, which is good. They listened. But for those who do end up, right, especially if they discontinue the original IR2, which I recommend they do, and they start blowing those out and you pick up a spring ramp to put one in, those people are not going to have the easiest time putting this in. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. There's 2 slots. It's the only spot that it can fit. But it felt like it was about to break, and I think I almost did break it. Thankfully, I managed to get it in without snapping the tabs on it, because these are built really well. The plastics that they're using are very, very good. But if new player, that's going to be a problem. So I'm very happy they're including these now, but that was not a good experience installing it, because again, no manual. I thought I was doing it right. Turned out I almost did it wrong because I almost snapped one of the tabs getting it in there, but in the end managed to get it in. A brand new player may have a bit more difficulty with that. Now, it did come, at least the one that I got, came with the Crown SF2 speed feed. You can see it there. I've got one on my fancier Spire here. These are awesome. These speed feeds are probably some of the best I've ever used, period. Now, I am used to the rotor speed feeds that are often, that molded rubber that has, just that give to it to let the paint in. And yeah, these are pricey. I can see why the new version of the IR2 doesn't come stock with one of these, because it would just be almost impossible to recommend a Spire 5 if the speed feeds were the same on the SE, because these are one of the big differences between the two. Is this is just such a top-notch speed feed. But mine came with one, and I love it, except that taking it on and off ran into another problem. Now, this is an amazing system here. So you just press down on this tab, and right, there's a little tabby guy there. You can see it probably better in the photos. And then it pops out. You'd never have to remove this sprung bit here. Mine's getting painted, so I took it off. Unlike the internals where they have that arrow, there is no arrows and there's no indication of how to actually take this darn thing off. I only knew how to do it properly because I watched videos. If somebody had not watched videos on this product ahead of time, they might not know how to take this lid off. That's a problem. And that's an easy to solve problem. Just make a manual, right? You could do an arrow or something there on the plastic, but that's going to be far more expensive than just having a PDF somewhere out there on the internet. So yeah, amazing system, just no documentation to tell you how to use it. I could go and read the Spire 4 manual, and it will tell me how to do that because they've been using this system for ages. But again, you're a brand new player. You just bought yourself your first high-end loader, and there's no manual for it. Are you going to think to go and read the manual for the previous generation of the next step up? I don't think so. So there is that, but it's a great system. You just have to up your documentation on it and have some type of documentation on it. I had watched some videos. I knew to remove it that way. Easy. Cool. So I get my lid off, and I go to put on my speed feed, and then we have this latch here, better viewed here. This does not click on just pressing down. You have to press that in. I did not know that. There's no indication of that. The angles that they have on this suggest that you probably could force it on. It won't work. And again, I thought I was about to break the darn thing, and then I figured it out myself. A simple manual would have solved that headache. And yeah, like I said, I have a lot of experience with loaders. It's not rocket science. There's a latch there. After trying to do it a few times, I realized, oh, there's a little, you can hear it. And it's nice because that latch will keep this thing in place. This thing is not going anywhere now that that is in. Great. But write it down somewhere. Because again, I figured it out. It took me probably 20 seconds to figure out how to take the speed feed on and off of this thing. If I was a brand new player who, again, that's this price point, although $130, that's not a cheap loader. But I'm going to be pointing people, if somebody wants to spend this type of money on a loader so that they just never have to worry about a loader again, of like, I want a great loader so that I'm just set, I can and I do recommend the SE, because now that you've stepped up your game and you put the spring ramp in and you put in the included speed feed, even if it is a cheaper speed feed than what I ended up getting, because again, I got this Crown 2 or whatever the heck it's called on my IR2. Yeah, this isn't as nice of a speed feed, but at this $130, like, you're coming out swinging. You're going to get a lot of players who just, no, I don't want something cheap. I want a really good loader. Oh, we'll get the IR2 SE. These things are awesome. Like, it's not going all the way up to a Spire 5, so you're not paying extra for, color coordination. In my opinion, that's the main thing you get with these. But you're also not, cheaping out and getting something that's going to break on you. So that first-time user is not going to have a very good experience with your product. All you have to do, Virtue, to solve all the problems that I have with your IR2 is put out a manual. You've solved the spring ramp because you're including it now. You've started to include a speed feed. You don't even have to do that. You could sell an SE without the speed feed and just price it directly against the LTR, and you're going to be laughing. Like, you've got then two very strong competitors in that price point as well, right? You'll end up having 3 price points worth of loaders just by changing that. But yeah, as it stands, I still do recommend the IR2. I haven't done too much on the gun stuff with it yet because it's minus 30 here, but it's super well built. It loads pretty fast. It's not as fast as something like a rotor, but I can see why they are as popular and recommended as they are, and that's why I'm passing along that recommendation. And yeah, a full review coming soon. But yeah, in the meantime, it is still, like, the SE is still my number one recommendation in that $100 to $150 range, because it solved all of the issues other than the lack of a manual. Just put out a manual, Virtue. You know how to do it. You've done it a whole bunch of times. But if, like me, you like reading manuals and like reading things, head over to thepaintballpost.com. We have written articles on things like this loader that I just rambled on about for 15 minutes. We have recommendations for loaders. We have recommendations for paintball guns. We've got some news about different potentially leaked, or not potentially. We have news on some leaked products and whatnot. Yeah, paintballpost.com. Swing on by. New articles. I put like 3 up yesterday. Yeah. Come and check us out. We'll see you in the next video.